Did Sony just kill sync speed? They also killed high-speed sync in one day. Hey guys, Omar here, and today Sony announced the Alpha 9 Mark III, which is, I guess you're going to see this in every video, is a game changer because it I can't even talk. It absolutely is a game changer, especially for a flash photographer like me. Now, I got to touch and hold and look at and play with, but not share any images from the A9 Mark III. And the reason it's the biggest deal ever is because it has what's called the global shutter. And this there are other cameras that have had a global shutter, one of them being the red Komodo camera, which is a cinema camera, and it's actually a Super 35, which is a smaller sensor. This is the first full frame, stills mostly camera that has a global shutter. And what a global shutter is you're used to usually a mechanical shutter, which are these little curtains that open up in your camera like this. You know, they open up, expose for your picture, and then close. But lately, a few cameras have come out where they've gotten rid of the mechanical shutter. For example, the Nikon Z8, most recently, it's just scanned. Okay, so the picture is scanned like this, which means you still have sync speed for flash. But this sensor is a global sensor, and that just means instead of it reading all the lines on the sensor, all the information on the sensor takes the picture at once. And what's great about that is there's no more sync speed. You can go out on a sunny day and actually set your shutter for 1/80,000th. That's the maximum that this camera does. And then you could shoot flash in non-high-speed sync. You can actually turn on a flash and use its full power. That's one of the problems with high-speed sync is because when you shoot high-speed sync, you basically are shooting the flash in a microburst mode because the shutter is going like this with a little sliver. And so the light has to sort of time and shoot light in that little sliver of these, you know, of the curtains. But you don't need that anymore. And so you could use flashes that are actually cheaper than high-speed sync flashes. You could use dumb flashes. So in terms of innovation, in terms of game-changing, in terms of something brand new, this is it. The global shutter is something that is going to change how we shoot with flash. Now, what it does for other things, because it's a global shutter, that means it doesn't read lines. With video, you usually, if you're reading, you know, if you're using a sensor that is, you know, reading the lines and you move the camera, you get all kinds of weird warpiness. This is gonna kind of, oh my gosh, look at this rolling shutter. That's called rolling shutter. And now this eliminates rolling shutter completely because it doesn't skip lines. It just reads out on the whole sensor. I'm just still in shock that this is something that can happen. And in my mind, I'm playing all the scenarios of where I've shot, you know, outdoors, and I have to make sure that the trigger's on high-speed sync and have to make sure the camera's in the right mode. Now, this camera has a 1/80,000th shutter. It also can shoot 120 frames a second, which is insane in raw 14-bit raw files. They did add something that's very useful, which is there's a burst button, which means it will only activate the super burst mode if you need it, as opposed to having to go into the menu and turning it on and then coming home with 1,200 photos in 10 seconds. But it coming back to flash. If you're going to shoot, let's say, an athlete using flash, you're still limited by the flash. So the camera's shutter speed is definitely faster. So if I were shooting things that were in high speed, it seems now that using continuous lighting, movie lighting, very bright lights to shoot at this 1/88,000th, imagine your ISOs, you really need really bright lights. So to get the most speeds, hummingbird wings, all that kind of stuff, you're still limited by your flash. Now I'm wondering if there's a way that you can shoot, if you can sort of coincide, you know, flashes have a strobe mode, you know, like a multi-mode with the shutter, this shutter with no banding kind of thing, where you can, you know, maybe use the flash output to freeze action versus the shutter. These are things that are maybe going to be fun to experiment with where you can either freeze action with the flash or you can freeze action with the shutter. And now photographers kind of have a choice, like which direction do you want to go in if you want to freeze an athlete dunking or something? Continuous lights with great shutter speed, or the traditional way, which is using a strobe at the decisive moment. Thing about this camera is you can capture every moment in a sequence, and even the sequence before you press the shutter, which is crazy. It has something called pre-capture, which is not new. Other cameras have had this before, where it records a little bit of a buffer before shooting your photograph. And this opens up the question. I see all these comments from people that are like, oh, it's way too easy now. Why are, shooting 120 frames a second, that's called video. Like, where's the challenge? And to those people, I say, why do you hate on people who love the technology moving forward? Like, why does that make you angry? I don't understand. If you're okay with your old DSLR that shoots 5 frames a second and you get more joy from capturing the decisive moment the old way, maybe on film, then keep doing that. But why? I don't understand why it angers so many people when they see a innovation that makes our jobs easier, okay? To me, that's mind-boggling. Personally, I would love to see what these skilled photographers can do with this, super fast shutter speeds and capture moments that I haven't seen before, especially wildlife, underwater world. So I'm interested to see what the professionals can do with this camera. If you're an amateur, stop hating on professionals that make money on photography and can afford this gear and want to use it and want to create with it. Like, anyone who hates that, forget you. Forget you. Go back. You just keep going backwards. All right, so today's word, global shutter. Global. I wish it had a better name. It should be like always on display. I think that's already a thing.